All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, the presidential fights right now are dominating the headlines, but beneath the surface is the real story that's going to dominate the next 4 years. That literally the entire city of Washington is gearing up to return everything to normal. And I do not mean that in a good way at all. While rightfully we're focusing a lot here on who Biden appoints where and how much executive power matters, everyone who knows how politics really works knows the real action is in Congress. And beneath the headlines, a truly depressing development is unfolding. Congress came back to town yesterday with newly elected members in tow for orientation, where they expected to hold elections within each caucus for House leadership on both sides. And guess what? Not a single thing is going to change at the top of each party. As Jake Sherman notes, the only interesting question that we have is how many symbolic no votes there will be against Nancy Pelosi. But that's exactly what they are. They're symbolic. They're not rooted in any serious attempt whatsoever to effect a change at the top of the Democratic Party. And it's not like the Republican Party is faring all that much better. Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise remain at the very top. Over on the Senate side, the exact same top three Republicans who have run things since the end of the Obama era are right there, locked into place, and they're not going anywhere. The most frustrating part about all of this is just shows how broken actual democracy is here in Washington, that amid two of the most transformative elections in modern American history, that our political party leadership is impervious to change. Probably the thing I hate most about D.C. is that the people who succeed the most here are often those who have failed the most. You start a war, you get rich on the other side. You crash the economy, you get rich on the other side. The closest any of these people come to accountability or losing their power was Trump's election in 2016. And for a variety of reasons, he let them off the hook or he worked with them. The Democratic Party is especially egregious in this respect. Take a look at this chart, which was put together by political commentator Matt Iglesias. All three of the people who will lead the Democratic House of Representatives under the next administration are over 80 years old. Pelosi is 80. Her deputy, Steny Hoyer, is 81. Jim Clyburn is 80. If you take a look at the chairmanships of every single committee in the House of Representatives, the median age is 73 years, a full 12 years older than the median age of the Democrat in Congress, which means not only is the median representative older than the average American, but that the leadership of the next governing party is even older than that. And you can cry ageism all you want at me. That's not the point that I'm making. The point I'm making is that the governing party is full of people who are unresponsive to the dramatic changes in the electorate, that their biases matter, and that the track record of getting us to this place means they're exactly the wrong people to lead us out. I mean, just look at the utter contempt of Nancy Pelosi for anyone who would suggest that she bears some responsibility for an election where her party just lost seats in the House when it expected to pick them up.
House seats, do you accept any responsibility for the loss of House seats?
I take responsibility credit for winning a majority and holding the House.
The story gets worse when you factor in Joe Biden in the White House, who is 78 years old. He will actually be the youngest person among the top three most important players in Washington when you include Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. Yes, you heard that correctly. The youngest person will be Joe Biden. There is rightfully a lot of talk about what it would mean to have a Democratic president with a GOP-controlled Senate, how McConnell will throw up a roadblock to everything that Biden tries to do while in office. And yeah, I think there is a lot of truth to that. But I actually think the scariest thing to imagine is not what might have been with a unified government either way, but is actually to consider what are the heinous things that they agree on the most amidst all of this chaos. And let me run you through a list of exactly what this cast of characters have agreed upon in the past that devastated this country. All three of these individuals will hold the highest offices in Washington, who voted for NAFTA in 1994. All three of them voted for permanent normal trade relations with China. All three of them voted for the war in Iraq. And all three of them have endorsed forever war at some point. All three played a large role in the fake bailouts of the 2008 financial crisis, and 2 out of the 3 of them played a central role in denying the American people stimulus checks in the middle of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. I foresee a world where Biden both gets nothing really that big done in the Senate in terms of his partisan agenda, but that a whole host of things which jive with the neoliberal bipartisan consensus sail through Washington. More sanctions on Russia for reasons which are completely unclear, more legislative roadblocks in order to set up conditions-based approaches through which America can literally never withdraw its troops from Afghanistan, blocking any efforts to force a vote on whether the U.S. should stay within the WTO, voting for more funding for NATO, even though our deadbeat European partners are begging to lick the boots of Xi Jinping, more funding for the provisional government of Venezuela, whatever the hell that means. And a common theme of this show is that what's really dangerous is whatever the bipartisan consensus seems to be. The things that sail through the Senate, 98-1, or the House, like 435-2, which are matters of routine business. Routine business is exactly what we can expect for the next 4 years of neoliberalism on autopilot, or in other words, a replay of the Obama presidency after 2012. That outcome will be a disaster for this country. I have no doubt about it. There will also remain the same opportunity that existed in 2016 and in 2020. The trends that we saw accelerate after the financial crisis in 2008 will only do so again. The political wins that lead to the rise of people like Bernie and Trump and AOC are going to continue. Maybe even to the rise of Trump once again in our politics. And if something like that does not happen, do not blame the American people. Don't blame Trump or whomever comes along next. Blame the people in charge. They are the ones that are setting the stage already for a second Great Awakening. And when I realized that of the top, also all of this is predicated on the special elections in Georgia going Republican, but I'm reasonably certain that's going to happen. So you look, I mean, Biden will be the youngest one of Pelosi and McConnell. And I couldn't believe it. I was
Hilarious.
like, holy crap. Mitch is 78, Pelosi's 80. Biden's going to be 78 years old when he takes the oath of office. These people have all been in Washington. Mitch was elected to the Senate in 1985. I don't even know when Pelosi was in there. I mean, you can go back and look at their votes on NAFTA and on PNTR. These are votes 20, 30 years ago. And they were all there, sitting right there in the House or the Senate or in this. I mean, and they all voted for them at the same time. And I'm like, what's scaring the hell out of me is not like, oh, McConnell's going to throw up a roadblock. It's not that. What do they agree on? What are the things that are going to pass through Congress? And I can just see it so clearly, like that Afghanistan thing. They will team up in order to keep troops in Afghanistan. Are you better off? I mean, I love that bipartisanship, don't you?
Yeah,
like,
and we're going to talk about that more later in the show, too. Well, and gridlock is its own sort of bipartisan consensus. In that when you have a system that already protects and funnels resources up to the most powerful, like that is the status quo that we have. So if you have a gridlock system, you are inherently protecting the powerful, continuing to funnel wealth to the top and all of those things. So gridlock benefits, everybody's like, oh my God, Joe Biden, it's going to be so hard for him to have a Republican Senate. Not at all. This is great for him. He knows how to play this game. Democrats are so good at coming up with excuses for their impotence, and a Republican Senate gives him the perfect excuse. He can just run to MSNBC all day long and CNN and talk about how mean they are and how unfair it all is and make excuses for not getting done what desperately needs to be done, especially right now in this country. You know, there is actually a difference if you look at the ages between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And look, by the way, we should say, like, I think both of us, if it was someone who was old, but you could look back at their record and be like, oh my God, they were right about all these things,
it's
like Mike Gravel or like Bernie Sanders.
Is it?
But the problem is that you look at these people who've been around forever and you're like, wait, you've been wrong on like literally everything. And it's not an accident that the people who were wrong in all the correct sanctioned neoliberal ways are the ones who ascend to power and then keep a tight grip on power basically forever. It is insane that Nancy Pelosi, who more than anyone else really at this point has overseen the destruction of the Democratic Party in most of the country, that she can just sail to
look at the
re-election
contempt on her face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy.
As Speaker of the House with next to no opposition whatsoever. No. That is insane, but it shows you they care so much more about their own power, maintenance of position, and, ability to hold on to their own little fiefdoms than they do about anything else whatsoever. And so I think that's why, going back to the partisan difference, and this is something that I've talked to Army Osei Frimpong about, so I want to give him credit for this idea. Republicans, I think, have more of a commitment to the actual project of what they're up to. Democrats don't stand for anything at this point, especially Democratic leadership, than like the perpetuation of their own power.
No, there's something to that, but it's different in the House and the Senate. Because in the Senate, look, McConnell, John Thune, these guys who run the Cock Barrasso, they've been around for a long time.
But McConnell's actually good at his job.
Well, is he though? See, this is the thing, right? Which is that it's become a devil's bargain where they define success. I mean, I think he compared himself to LBJ at a certain point. And I was like, really? Point me to a single piece of legislation other than the tax cuts that you presided over under your leadership. Again, he can't, because all he's pointing to is the judges. And okay, unilaterally putting people on the court, I think it's great, but is that enough to put you in the pantheon of the great leaders in history? No. And so the real issue is that he has gaslit the entire Republican Senate caucus into thinking that because he gets the judges done, that he's actually like this grand, effective leader. It's like it's just not the case.
Yeah, certainly by our metric of success, McConnell is...
Well, that's a people's metric.
Absolute disaster. By the metric of like any working class person in the country, absolute disaster. I think by his own metric of power plus like plutocracy and plus conservative control of the courts, he's been remarkably effective. If that's your project, you can't pick a better leader than Mitch McConnell. And that, unfortunately, is the project of a lot of Republicans in the Senate in particular.
That's what it is. It's a permanent minority, loser, ghetto mindset. As long as we get our judges, then we're good to go. Executive branch doesn't matter. Although doing legislation doesn't matter. And this is what's going to happen. I mean, I just see it so clearly. A reversion right back to 2015, 2014, when they're doing these pointless, stupid filibusters over nothing. And then the stuff that does get passed are these like deals, right? Sequestration. That was bipartisan. That was terrible for everybody. I mean, and you can go all the way down the line on these things, and you can just see how clearly it's coming back. And it's depressing.
Indeed.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.